everyone. Before I start my talk, this talk is not like a deep dive into technical things because I know like I am in between for you guys for the lunch, so I'm also hungry, so I'm gonna make it much more easier for you guys. The talk is more about the existing technology and the problems that we have especially with a technology that has been used exponentially in the last 3 years, and the way people has been forced to use the technology in a way because of the limitations and the barriers it does have on it. Sorry? Probably. It did work. Sorry. I'm going to talk about most people right now has and use about it. So it's around voice assistants or smart speakers, smart assistants. So the problem with it is, this is another problem because out of 7.5 billion people, only few people could use the technology the way it was supposed to be used. So a guy coming from a different type of language, which is not native to him, if he uses the technology, it becomes a huge problem because most of the time the smart voice assistant may not pick up what you're trying to ask or what you're trying to question. And also, it becomes a huge language barrier for the people to use the technology because you're forced to use the technology only in the default existing language which it supports. So there were many articles on the way the voice assistant has been trained because the data set which they are trained on English basically. So if you see out of 7.5 billion people, only like 5% or 5 to 6% of the people on this planet are the native English speakers, and remaining people do speak English, but as a secondary or a third language. So when you build technology, we feel that it is supposed to be used by everyone, irrespective of the ethnicity or your language or your place you come from. But especially in the case of voice assistants, that is not done. And we do have a lot of voice assistants offered by many companies, but people are forced to go back to their non-native languages that they need to use it so that they could have a useful conversation or a proper conversation with it. So, hi, my name is Kalyan Dixit. I'm a Mozilla tech speaker. So Mozilla Tech Speaker is a program that we have for the past 3 years. So we do select speakers and we train them for 8 weeks who speak on open web and other projects which are really helpful and which are needed for internet right now. If anyone are interested to join in our program, you could meet me after my talk. So what we're going to speak about today. So where we are right now, what, why, and how we did come into this stage, and what are the help that can be taken from the people so that we could make sure that we have our own voice for the next generation to be heard. So what is the problem? So the problem is the existing voice assistants don't support any other language in a proper way. For example, how many attendees are who from non-native English speakers, who don't speak English, is not your primary language? Yep. I mean, I am also a non-native English speaker, but the way I could only communicate with you guys is with the English because most of you do speak or understand English because it is your secondary language. But if you see around the world, there are many other languages. There are 7,800 languages in the world, and most of the people come under 25 languages limit because either people either speak either one of them or more than one. So the remaining languages are spoken by very less number of people, and they become extinct. So there is also a research that says that the existing languages become extinct faster than the species on the Earth. So by the next decade, we may even lose one of the languages, and there would be a museum somewhere in the world which says that there was this language in so and so year and still so and so year, and there were only few documents that were available to us. And I mean, it may happen, and it also did happen in a few of the archaeologist places where some languages were lost and people didn't have a proper documentation, and they have to rely on people who could only decipher the language, but they don't know, but they do based on the experience they do decipher those. So why do people use voice assistant, and how do people use, where do people use voice assistant? So if you see the most amount of time, so the voice assistants are inbuilt for the transport purposes, especially in cars, then at home, the next, and with the mobile devices. So if you see the graph, the graph shows an estimation of people using voice assistant, that has been increasing exponentially for the past 4 years, and the amount of people using voice assistants has been increasing thanks to the technology, because people are able to have latest technology, and we were able to minimize or build technology to such a smaller length so that we could embed a artificial intelligence into the phone itself, so that you could interact with the phone as a normal person. But the only issue is that you cannot interact with your own native language. You have to again use English as the language, because it is the only language which it has been trained on. So this was one of our researchers done, and especially for the US people. So we saw a lot of increase in voice assistant technologies for the past 6 years, and at this point we found out that the existing technology doesn't serve the true purpose of what it is supposed to do. So you are limiting or narrowing down people, and you're forcing people to learn a language because they are supposed to use your technology or a service. Why? Because it is against the free speech of a person, because as a person you are free to speak in any other language. So as a technology, people who build, they should also make sure that the existing technology does support all the languages, irrespective of where the person is from, or which language does he speak. Because when you narrow down, or when you take away the choices for the end user for the technology that you have built and that they are planning to use, so you're going against the free speech, because you're forcing the user to fall back on a language he's not comfortable with, or he's not using it every day in his life. So if you see the graph, it clearly shows that the existing content on the internet, it is more than 50% is in English, but if you see the top languages spoken in the people, English doesn't come top 2, but it goes to the top 3 position, because there are many people who do speak other languages, and there are many people who are in billions of numbers, and the content which has been developed or been put on internet is only on English, because it is more than almost equal to 55% of content you find on internet is on English. So other people who know the linguistics and they are interested, they do the localization for the existing content, and they also help people, because there are many people in the world who doesn't even have a proper internet connection, and right now we do have many people who are the first-time users of internet. So as a first-time user, you're not supposed to be fearing because the existing content is not in your native language, which also hinders their ideas or also expressions or the way they just wanted to use internet. And you're trying to take away the basic choice of them to use a technology which is supposed to be free and which is supposed to serve all in the first place. So what happens if a language extends in a manner? So there are many languages right now which did extend in the past 6 years, and the extension has been exponential because there are very few speakers every year, if you count, because there was this particular language in South Africa where only like 200 people could speak in 2015, but by 2017, there were only like 10 people who could able to speak. By the 2019, they were in a single-digit number because there is no proper documentation, and people are moving away from the native languages to English because it does serve the purpose of having a proper communication with around the world. But you should also make sure that your native language it doesn't become extinct, because for your next generation, you don't want to take a storybook of your language and say, we used to have this language in our period of time. So there are many indigenous communities and under-reserved communities where they do have a language which doesn't have a script, but very few people speak. When technology comes into the place, they doesn't have an option but to drop down their existing language and move to the offered language for the technology that they could use for. So, these are the companies who do have a control on the existing voice technology, and the only issue is that many of those companies are very closed source. Only few companies do have a proper data sets that you could take and work on, but they are very few, and also they don't offer more number of language data sets. And even though they do offer as a service, it is quite expensive, because if you want to train a new language, if you want to use the resources, it is quite hard, and it does become a quite expensive task to work on a new language data set with the existing technology, which is not open source and which is proprietary to some companies. So what exactly goes into the voice assistant in the background is so we do have a project called Project Common Voice. So it is a community-based product, completely open source. So it is, by seeing all these issues, we thought, why don't we use humans themselves to create a voice data set, so that we do have a proper voice data set with all the accents of people, with different dialects, and also more number of languages, because when you train the data with the real-time people, so the data set is much more efficient, and it is also not biased, because you do have an n number of people of different ages speaking about it. So if you train a data set only with the younger generation, the older generation, when they use the technology, may not have a proper resources or proper information given to them. So our idea is to include as many people as possible of different age sets and also different accents, because some people have a different accent for few languages and some people have a different accent for the same language. So that was our idea. So at the background, we use something called as Project Deep Speech, which is based on a Baidu research paper. So we do have something called SSTT. It's a speech-to-text engine algorithm that we use to train the model to learn new languages by recording the user's voice. So this is how exactly the voice assistants get trained in the film. So you will be shown a sentence on the screen, and when you start recording it, once you record, you do also have an option to redo it if you're not satisfied, or you could submit to it, and it is stored in the server, and we do clean the data, and also we validate the data like a few number of times, and that goes in the training part. And then it does go to the neural network so that it gets trained automatically from the next time. And at the end of it, we do have a proper voice data set, which is in a native language. So how do we do it right now? So we use the community because has been our backbone for Mozilla, because most of the products that end users use as a community people, there's a lot of community guys who take care of it. Like especially in India, we have around like 6,000 community members around India who do work in various departments like the Q&A, the browser, the add-ons, the Firefox desktop, and the Firefox Android, so that we do all the behind the scene stuff, so the end users do have a smooth experience. And also we do take care of all the existing problems as a community people, and that is why Mozilla did come up with a project, because if you have such a huge number of people in the world, it becomes easier to have a voice data set with different native languages and a proper way that a machine can speak to a person, so that you could have a normal conversation in your own language with a machine, and which really helps people, because it opens many ideas to people to work on it, and people can also develop applications on it. And we could also use the same existing technology for the differently abled people, because some people may not use a technology which it is forcing them to learn something. So instead of doing that, we are working on a technology which is open source, which is offline, and which is built upon from the people from the scratch. So it is not we are doing it. We are only storing the sentences, and we are training the model. It is you, the community, and the people who contribute to it, who are the people who are making new voice data sets for various languages that we have. So these are a common voice project, and there are many ways as a new people, because we didn't want to have barriers, because if you go for technological products, you need to know some sort of a programming language or some sort of a software thing. But this is a completely open to everyone. You could contribute to it irrespective of your age or irrespective of your background. It is as simple as that. So this is our strategy that we have been working on, so that it is easier for people to have a more real-time and also proper experience when they use a technology in their own native language, because the existing translations that we see from Google, they are not up to the mark, because if you take many languages, if you convert a whole sentence from English to other languages, there is a probability of like 15 to 20% is not based on the grammar, and 50 to other 10%, they lose the entire information that was supposed to be delivered in your own native language. So we do have a lot of campaignings happening around in the world, and we are mobilizing people to contribute to it, because it really helps to have a proper native voice assistant where you could communicate over it. So how we are planning to do it, like we do have a very easier method to do that, and this is our approach initially for why did we take a project which most people think that it is quite hard to achieve. Because if you see, many countries do have different languages and different dialects. So if I take an example of my own country, India, we do have like 24 official languages and hundreds of unofficial languages with thousands of dialects. So if you want to develop a voice assistant which can satisfy every part in the India, it's a huge task for even a topmost company right now who's doing a great work in terms of voice assistant, because you need a huge amount of hardware resources, because that is what it takes to have a proper data set. So for this, to have a proper usable voice assistant, it requires around 10,000 hours of recorded data, which needs to be validated and cleaned, and it takes around 5,000 sentences minimum of that to record your voice. So you need to have 5,000 sentences to start with, then you can increase it to as many sentences as we go on. So the basic scale, the minimum entry point for this in terms of sentences would be 5,000, and the would be 10,000 hours of data. So the more number of data you have in hours, the more easier it would be for the algorithm to have a proper and a easier and a stable voice data set, which can be deployed on any other application because it is open source. And also you could work on new applications based on it. And you could even integrate that application into your own mobile phones, which we are working right now, because if you see, the data sets are quite heavy in terms of storage, because even a normal 1,000 hours of recorded data which has been validated takes around 25 GB of space. And we are trying to make sure that we use neural networks and get it down to as low as possible, so that you could download the voice data set on your phone as an offline thing, and you could directly interface with it, and you could also interface with the existing apps, so that you could use the voice assistant, and you could control your phone and smart devices in your house. So how can people help? Because since I did mention that it's a community project, so the one way is that we do have two things. Either you could speak or you could listen. So in the speaking part, you do have a sentence on the screen, and you could record it in your own native language. And then if you are sure that you did right, you could save it. And in the second part is the listening part, where you validate other speaker voices, and after that we internally it gets validated some amount of times before it goes to the training part. So I mean, you cannot. The only issue is that you cannot validate your own voice, because then it becomes a huge issue of the existing project itself. So how can we do that? You could create an account, and you could log into it, and you could specify the language that you want to start the data set for. So the reason why we ask this thing, because when we open source the data sets, we mention the age group and also the language and the accent and the dialect, so that people who are using the voice data set knows exactly what type of data set the language is based on, and what are the things that they need to work on if they want to train the data again on their own algorithms, or they want to deploy it into their applications. Yeah, we do have a lot of contributions happening, because this project was initiated in 2017 October, and for the past 1.5 years, almost two years, we did have a lot of contributions from around the world, and right now we do have a ongoing campaign for English, because we just want to test it out, if this works or not. So we are working on to able to get reach the goal of 10,000 hours of data, and then we are also working parallelly with other languages, so that there could be easier way, when we are able to achieve the English one, then it will be easier for us to understand what are the problems does it involve, and that could be mitigated in the other native languages. We do have more than 11,000 contributors who have been contributing for the 16 or 17 languages, and also we do have other collaborations from a university, and we are from other open source organizations, which has been also been helping us in to get voice data set of different languages, and we combinedly train them, and we do deploy them. The dataset is open source. You could download it from the website, and you could even contribute to it by uploading your own voice dataset, and you could mention the exact criteria, like how many hours it has been trained, or what type of voice dataset it is from. So how people can help? So anyone can just register it and record your voice, validate it, and keep contributing. And we need more number of people from different languages to contribute, so that we do have a huge number of data sets, and it is much easier for us to train the algorithm to have a proper voice data to different native speakers, and it also helps other people so that they don't feel left out in a technological wave where you're supposed to learn a new type of language because you have to use that technology. Yeah, thank you.